Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This will be a quick walkthrough of my beta release of the DShieldManager project I've been working on. What does it do, you might ask? Well, I use it every morning to check the status of my DShield sensors. I have quite a few out in the Azure cloud. I use it to fetch honeypot logs from those sensors, and I can combine them and take a look at them visually with SQL. Then I can fetch my TTY logs, or the downloads themselves that have been downloaded onto the sensors by bad people. And I'm doing full packet capture, so I can pull all of those down, and I import that into Security Onion for further analysis. Let's take it for a spin. I select H to download my honeypot logs, and it's going to go fetch them from each of the sensors. A short while ago, I deployed a brand new sensor in Israel, so it's probably going to throw an error. Actually, no, it's going to have a honeypot for today's date already, which is great. Now that I get here, I can press any key and return. Would I like to take a look at them? Sure. Capital H. I have to be very specific with my date here, or it's going to throw an error. Show me the honeypot logs for the 2nd. There's where we get a failure on Israel. That's fine. Press any key. It's going to open this in SQL Viewer. And from here, we can see how many records there are. These are for all honeypots presently. I'm going to separate these based on sensor in the not too distant future. I can come in here and do custom SQL queries if I like. So, for example, here I'm telling it, give me essentially the top 10 source IP addresses. Poof, that works. Then if I close this product, it's going to take me right back to the menu. I hit Q to exit, and I'm done. To deploy a new sensor, so open a brand new terminal and issue the dshield command, which is an alias. Puts me in the correct directory. I change into remote deploy, and I take a look at sites.csv. I want to do this in Israel, so I know that the name of my host is going to be Israel, and I use Israel Central as my location. There's some verbiage here that you really ought to read. It's important. I just hit yes to continue. It's going to throw an error when it tries to delete the Israel group because it doesn't exist, and that's fine. Then it creates the group. After this, it takes a little bit longer because it's creating a deployment group of all the items, the virtual machine, the IP network security group, so on and so forth. I will end up snipping this here so that you don't spend the next 6 or 7 minutes watching this thing say running. Okay, now we're going to get some output that shows that it's making progress. Once this has completed, we have some additional scripting that happens here. I tell it to go out to ipinfo.io and grab your IP address from which you're running this. It adds it to the network security group in Azure so that you always have access to port 12222, for SSH access in the future. I make you wait for an additional 15 seconds so that the host comes up. Then we're going to connect to it, very quickly upload this zip file that has additional files for making changes that we want. Then it's going to execute additional commands to update the Ubuntu Linux instance that's there. Then it's going to unzip the files that I pushed up there that has our packet capture, cron tab changes, my own personal IP tables that I use from time to time. Since I'm a customer of Starlink and my IP address has a tendency to change willy-nilly like the wind. Then you're going to see a whole lot of other output here continuing to update the Linux operating system. When those updates are complete, we'll also see it clone a copy of DShieldManager, and then it's going to tell you what the public IP address of this new host you created in Azure is. We'll take that IP address, and in my case, I go behind the curtain and update my DNS record for a host named Israel. You may need to go update your own custom domain name, or you might need to make some entries in your local etc hosts file to fool your operating system into doing our bidding. I updated my A record, so I was chomping at the bit, and I typed Israel, and it came back and said that port is not available. It's because we haven't installed the DShield honeypot yet. So we use the pre-DShield script and Israel behind it. It'll go connect, accept the fingerprint, and from here we will start the installation of the DShield honeypot. We'll accept the defaults on the first several items, and then it's going to do some updates with pip. When it has completed this, it's going to ask you for your email address and your API key. Both of those you will have received by signing up over at isc.sans.org. So when it comes up on the screen, you'll enter both of those items. You're not going to see mine. Here we go. I tested it. My API is valid. I'm going to accept the defaults on all of these items as we go by as well. Now it's going to do a significant chunk of further configuration. Now as we enter the end of the configuration, it's going to ask us to configure a certificate for SSL. This is our dummy certificate. What I'm going to do is set this up to look like it's in Israel, and I like to use the word customers in my host name. It just makes it look juicier for attackers. Now that DShield installation is complete, I'm going to remove the installation log because it does have my API key in it. Then I'm going to make a few quick edits, 3 in particular. I'm going to edit etc dshield.ini. I'm going to add a configuration item that creates a local copy of the firewall log with a different name. Save that. Then we're going to make changes to calorie. We're essentially going to tell it, hey, we want TTY logs, so we're going to change the false for TTY log to true. One last edit that I'm going to make is to the status script. By default, it's going to try to put out some color that when I use SSH for my check status in a loop, has a tendency to get ugly right here where these items are. So I'm just getting rid of the if-else and leaving everything set the way it was. Then I reboot. Once I have rebooted, I'm going to verify that I have a symbolic link created in the bin SSH directory. I already do, but I want to link it to that SSH-2 script that is in there so that now I can simply type the host name, Israel, and it's going to go get connected. Ta-da! Now that I know that host is functional and I can get to it, I'm going to make a few more changes here locally on my workstation to support this. One of the really important items now is that we have to edit vars in the bin directory, and we want to add this new host to the probes array. So I put Israel in here and I save it. Now that I've done this, I've done most of the heavy lifting. So let's just run DShieldManager. I type S. Let's see the sensor status. And it's going to go in a loop and go out and check those. Yep, North America West is fine, North America East, so on and so forth. So anytime I add or remove a sensor, I'm going to want to change what's in that variable in vars. That variable is used by just about every script in DShield, so it's important. I hope you've enjoyed this introduction, and I hope you get a chance to play around with this. I'd love to get some great feedback.